Welcome to the CEO and the Salesman Podcast. I'm your host, Matthew White. I'm the salesman part of the title. Each week, I sit down with CEOs and entrepreneurs to discuss and dissect their journeys, filled with triumphs, challenges, and some good old-fashioned business wisdom. Get ready to laugh, learn, and be inspired as we dig into leadership, strategy, sales, marketing, and everything in between. This is the CEO and the Salesman Podcast. Let's get on with the show. Welcome to the CEO and the Salesman Podcast, where we interview CEOs doing interesting and innovative things. Today, we're joined by Kat Long, a graduate of Oxford University who studied experimental psychology. I want to know about what that is. Also spent about a decade consulting to businesses across finance, tech, and also environmental impact and resource management. So I want to talk about all of those things today. How are you going, Kat?
Really good. Thank you. After a few technical issues, we're up and I'm very excited.
We're absolutely away. I'm so happy that we got this. So we're going to make this relatively quick. But what I wanted to start with is, what is experimental psychology?
Yes, I think it might have been Oxford University's way of trying to make psychology sound a little bit more scientific.
Right.
It is a science degree, and essentially we learn everything from mental health issues to developmental psychology to social psychology. So I'm sure it's pretty much the same as any other degree called psychology, but They give it a fancy title. It was very scientific, lots of statistics.
Okay, got it. Okay, I had in my mind, I had sort of a dark lair where people are being poked and all that sort of stuff. So that's not it.
Yes, I think there's now rules around the use of rats and humans in psychology experiments, but I did see a few rats.
Oh dear, my phone's ringing now. What a wonderful thing. That's good. Go away. Okay, can you still hear me?
Absolutely.
Oh, no. Can you hear me?
I can.
This is going fantastically, isn't it?
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, really great. Okay, well, we can cut that bit out. The good news is we can cut that bit out in edit. Anyway, so tell me a bit about Trace. So your business now. So the reason I wanted to talk to you today is I know that your business is called Trace, and the Trace is all about helping businesses achieve net zero. So tell me a bit about that, please.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's the biggest challenge of humankind, of our decade, or probably a century, to be perfectly honest. The reason I am passionate about solving for this, I wish I had, a story of having been in some sort of flood or something, personal like that connects me to climate change. But I think the reality was that there was a bit of a theme through my last few jobs in corporate. And most recently, I was working at Macquarie Bank, which is the largest renewable energy infrastructure investor actually in the world. And I was doing a lot of projects with their assets team and just learned a lot about renewable energy and the transition and how important that was going to be, but also opened my eyes to the fact that, climate change and climate technology is actually a very potentially profitable space to be in as well. So you don't need to solve by climate just through charity. And while I absolutely admire and support any charities that are trying to solve for climate, I do believe that we're going to get to the transition quicker through profitable business models. So I think it was this kind of insight that I had through working in my previous roles, while also personally experiencing, the kind of psychological threat that everybody here in Australia had when we just after the Black Summer and all the bushfires of, wow, this is real. This is going to affect everybody. Those two things kind of came together to make me want to go into climate. And at the same time, my co-founder, she was working in technology. She had worked at an energy company previously as well and had a bit of experience. So we thought, well, let's try and solve this problem. And it's evolved. Look, we didn't set out with exactly the same mission that we did today. We knew we wanted to do something about climate and we wanted it to be a for-profit business so that we could do it as quickly as possible. But it has evolved based on what we've observed is a great need. And for me, that is helping small to medium businesses make this transition. And these small to medium businesses have a lot of pressure to be more sustainable, to report their carbon emissions, to be really taking action and transitioning to net zero. But they don't have the internal skills. They don't have the resources. So Trace is really trying to close that skills gap and help them make that transition without needing to hire consultants or dedicated personnel.
Yeah, okay, really interesting. So I've been hearing the adverts on the radio recently about how it's promoting this net zero idea and promoting activities around that. You know, it's about and the advert on the radio is along the lines of businesses and consumers are demanding I guess a plan. And maybe it's my COVID created skepticism of media. And I just assumed, oh, well, somebody's making a buck out of this. And that's not a bad thing. It's just that how do we align the requirement to be a good global citizen and retain profitability in our organizations? Because, I run a small business, much like a lot of people who listen to the podcast, and I've got stuff to do, man. I'm busy, and I've got wages, and I've got clients who are slow on paying, and all this other stuff. Why? So tell me, how do I reconcile those two masters that I've got? A level of expectation around wanting to be a good global citizen, but also I got bills to pay.
Totally, I hear you. And look, we've seen that change in mentality as the economy has changed. In 2021. Many companies were voluntarily taking climate action because they kind of felt like they had time and resource, and their employees were demanding it. With cost of capital so much higher now, and the cost of living crisis, I understand that climate may not be number one priority for smaller businesses. So I think what's worked in our favor is there is actually now incoming legislation. So there will be, as of 2025 here in Australia, a law that says that companies over a certain size, and to be clear, it is very large companies to start with,
right?
But it does roll down into smaller businesses. They need to publicly disclose carbon emissions and other sustainability metrics and their risks and strategy. It's a big ask for these companies. And you're probably still thinking, well, why does it matter for SMEs? Your company in particular, well, I've got a million other things to worry about. And the simple answer is you don't have to tomorrow, but we are in a race against time. The longer we keep delaying the transition, or at least just taking some sort of action, the less likelihood we have of reaching net zero. So what we're seeing is that a lot of these larger companies are actually pushing that pressure down onto their supply chain. So let's say you are working with a large technology company, Salesforce, to take an example. They're pretty aggressive and ambitious around their net zero targets. They're now thinking, well, how can we help our supply chain decarbonize? And it's those suppliers, those smaller businesses that get asked by their clients to do something, that are left with no solution. And that's the problem area that Trace is trying to solve for. Our technology is very accessible. It's easy to use. You're not expected to be a sustainability expert. We want to be your professional sustainability team kind of in your pocket. So we are trying to lower the barriers in order to promote action as quickly as we can.
Got it. Okay. And so how can we turn that into a commercial advantage? Because as you said, the best way to solve a thing is through, well, the only way that most of the world's problems can be solved is through either education or commerce, because handouts and legislation is certainly they're two hammers. But how do we actually create how do we create an incentive? How does a small business actually go, you know what, I'm going to create a financial advantage by doing this?
Yeah. And look, I think if I had a clear answer to that, I would have 10 times more customers.
Right.
I think that is something that a lot of companies grapple with. Now, there's a lot of kind of soft data to show that there's benefit to taking action voluntarily, right? You've got employee engagement, ability to attract and retain that younger generation that we know care about climate and are very passionate about sustainability. So by not having anything on your website, zero commitment, you are losing out on talent. So that's kind of one thing. But then there's now a hard and fast sort of rule that is, well, if you want to service some of these large corporates and governments that have their own net zero targets, the chances are they're not going to consider you as a supplier over the next few years if you haven't got some sort of policy or strategy around climate. I'll give you a really tangible example. Over in the UK, interestingly, despite all its flaws and faults, the NHS is actually a real forward thinker in this space. And they've now enforced a rule that says if you're a supplier to the NHS, be it a medical devices company, a large pharmaceutical, or the person that creates the masks, you have to have a carbon reduction plan in order to win a contract with the NHS. Now that is bold. It's tough on those poor SMEs that are, just like you said, just trying to make a buck. But it's forcing an action, and it's meaning that more and more players like Trace are coming to the market to solve that in an accessible way, which is a good thing. So we do need a stick in order to get companies to act now. But the carrot will follow. I mean, ultimately, if you don't take climate action, you're not going to win big contracts. You're going to actually be at risk of operating in a totally climate risk, environment. You may not exist if we don't tackle this now. But also you can save money. A few things require investment up front, like renewable energy and investing in electric vehicles or solar panels, but they have a payback period, and that payback period is getting shorter. So unfortunately, nothing comes for free and nothing is sort of instantly rewarding. But there is lots of payback in the long term.
Very cool. Thank you. Appreciate that. So tell me, so moving away from Trace and particularly what you do, so what lessons, the people who listen to this podcast are other technology CEOs, people who are trying to grow an organization. What lessons have you learned, or what would you, how long have you been doing this business, by the way?
Just over 4 years. Yeah, 4.5 years.
What would you tell yourself today from 4 years ago, what would you tell yourself if you went back in time?
I think about this a lot, to be honest, Matt, and I struggle to come up with an answer, not because I think I've done things perfectly, but just because I don't think there is one perfect route in a startup. And I think whatever route you take, you're going to make mistakes along the way. But I think if I was to start a business again, there are things I could shortcut. There are things that I could avoid the inefficiencies around. One of them, I do think I would have raised probably a bit more money earlier. And, that's a whole discussion around venture capital and how to fund your startup when it is, generally unprofitable to start with. I think having a bit more of a buffer to be able to run faster, quicker would have been helpful. And I would have done that by just going to bigger funds, perhaps expanding internationally quicker. Then there's just been a lot of learnings around recruitment. You hear this all the time from founders, right? You make a lot of mistakes. You also have a lot of wins, and I've got an incredible team, so I'm very, very grateful for that. But the time spent on recruitment, and not even the physical recruitment, but the thinking beforehand of who you need, the defining what that role looks like, then advertising it, then recruiting, then onboarding. If you get that wrong, you've just lost 6 months of your time, and we've done that probably too many times. So I think being really clear on what skill sets you need, and more often than not, it's not necessarily about skills, it's about mindset and sort of adaptability and having people that are culturally a good fit, because your needs will change over time. So I definitely would have been probably a bit more decisive about who to hire earlier if I were to do it again. But other than that, I think you just need to have a lot of grit, a lot of optimism, and you just need to keep putting one foot in front of the other, because, you'll have good days, but you'll also have bad, and you've got to be able to weather those storms.
Got it. So you said you worked with Macquarie and other very large organizations. Have you taken any particular lessons, ideas, thought processes from those roles into your startup?
Yeah, I'd say two things. So consulting, I think a lot of people don't, unless you've been a consultant, don't really understand what being a consultant means. But you're basically an extra pair of hands, and a strategic thinker that doesn't get caught up in the red tape and the complexity of an organization, because you have kind of a bit of an arm's length arrangement. So you learn a lot of skills there that are useful to be deployed in a startup. You're generally good at a lot of things, but not amazing at anything. So I'm good at financial modeling. I'm good at writing a strategy deck. I'm relatively good at communication. These are all skills I think you need as a founder, because you're ultimately trying to take your investors and your customers and your employees on a journey. And you also need financial sort of prowess to be able to keep it going. So those consulting has definitely taught me those kind of base skills. But I think what's actually probably makes myself and my co-founder quite unique versus other founders is actually our real deep focus on what I'd call design thinking or human-centered design. And I spent many years at Macquarie running projects deploying human-centered design. It's essentially, putting humans at the center of any problem and going through very fast iterations of learning their insights, ideating, coming up with a prototype, testing, doing it all over again. We are obsessive about doing that at Trace, sometimes to our detriment. There's parts of our product that I think we probably should have invested in earlier, rather than it's still a prototype, frankly. But what that's meant is we have been incredibly efficient. We have built something that is a world-class software platform with a very lean team. And it's because we've never really built anything that our customers don't want, because we always test it first. We always make sure we do the research, come up with some sort of prototype, very, very basic, get that in front of customers, get feedback early, And if they don't like it or they don't use it, we don't build it. So I think that's helped us keep our R&D spend at least very minimal, but still have something that our customers love.
Yeah, I love that. I've done some work with businesses who specialize in that human-centered design piece, and it makes so much sense when it's explained to you, when it's explained to someone.
Yeah.
You go, oh, well, that makes sense. But so many founders are sort of Steve Jobsian, focus group of one. This is my idea. I'm just going to go ahead and deploy it. And I did the same thing in my first technology business. We built what we eventually came to know as the maximum unviable product. We spent hundreds of thousands of dollars building a piece of software that literally nobody bought. And we didn't even have any capital. We didn't have any
changed, right?
Go ahead.
You've got to be adaptable because looking at the last 4 years of the space we've been in, the change in terms of sentiment, regulation, capital available, skills available has been rapid. So if we were just dogmatic about one thing we were going to build back in 2020, it would not fit this market today. So I do think that's a skill you need to have as a founder, but it is hard because you also need to balance it with a really clear vision. So having that sort of flexibility, but also clarity, it can sometimes be in conflict, I think.
So keep the goal or the end state in mind, and then how you get there, which is customer centric design. You go, this is what the customer wants. Let's build backwards from what they want. Go that way. Exactly. Yeah, got it. Okay.
Keep the vision kind of is fixed, but how you get there, the journey is not. Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. So what's been your most successful path to market? We talk about go to market, we talk about marketing and sales, etc. What's been, for Trace, what's been your key to getting in front of clients and selling?
Look, it's changed, and honestly, it changes almost on a 6-monthly cycle. So things that work, we obviously keep doing it, but then they might stop working quite as well. I mean, any founder that's listening to this will have gone through the challenge of having all their AdWords set up and their SEO is great, and then all of a sudden Google changes their algorithm, so you've got to figure that out again. So we always have a little bit of advertising going, but it's a bit volatile and also quite expensive. Outbound is an interesting one. And again, using 2021, the sort of heyday of 2021 as an example, we were getting all of our leads in outbound, and it was incredibly efficient, incredibly scalable. And actually the quality of the leads was pretty good.
Outbound telephone or outbound email?
Mainly emails. We've now had to make it a bit more personalized. I think, with AI and just the explosion of AI tools and outbound tools, everyone's getting savvier. So you do need to make it more personalized, and a call is more likely to convert. But back in 2021, we'd send 2,000 bulk emails and get, 10 good responses. Doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a very low touch.
Well, when it costs $0 to send 2,000 emails.
Exactly. Or $100 for a subscription. It's really nothing. So we still, again, we do a bit of that, but it's not as effective as it used to be. We now actually have a completely new channel, which, 2 years ago, I wouldn't have even known would be on our roadmap. And that's through channel partnerships, specifically helping financial accountants. So your typical bookkeepers and accountants and advisors become carbon accountants. Now that, if you told me that, as I said, a couple of years ago, I would have said, that's bonkers. Why would they do that? But actually, the industry has really picked up on the fact that they have a role to play here. A lot of the data that we use in our platform is financial. A lot of their skill set is perfectly matched to what we do. We just need to get them up the curve of climate and sustainability. So that's proving really, really successful. But as I said, it's not a silver bullet. We've got to keep all of our channels open.
Yeah, I love that. It's interesting because, that accountant, that position is a trusted advisor. And so if we can, and that path to market, if it's brought up by, a cold email, cold phone call, that has some level of response. If it's a good offer and you can actually write well or speak well.
Yes.
But if your accountant says something to you, this is going to help you run your business, then that takes a whole other level. So I've got a few clients actually using the advisor model or that way of operating, going into businesses. So how do you work with, coach, train? Do you spend much time working with those accountants, helping them sell your product?
A huge amount.
Yeah,
a huge amount. I mean, we have a team of sustainability experts that have studied sustainability and worked in climate tech for anywhere up to 10 years. we're essentially trying to condense everything they've learnt into, a few months. So it takes time. It's not something that can happen overnight. Bearing in mind, these accountants also have a day job. They also have demanding clients that still need their BAS done and their tax year end tax returns done. So I think the reason it's working is because there's a real monetary opportunity here for the accountants. So we're not just talking a bit of a software referral fee. They actually have the opportunity to learn and deliver a whole new advisory practice around non-financial reporting and decarbonisation, powered by our software program. So there's a lot of appetite. But to answer your question, absolutely, we do training programs. We help with collateral. We do lots of how-to documents. We even get on the phone with their clients with them and actually co-pilot those first few discussions to give them the confidence. Somebody said to me, the other day that founders like to know things just in time, but accountants like to know things just in case, which is a perfect way of phrasing it, because they need to, they are professional, they are rigorous, so they want to make sure they understand everything perfectly before they start selling it to clients. The biggest challenge for that channel is education.
Yeah, got it. Well, it's just, I'm so glad to hear that you're spending that time nurturing those relationships and training and providing them the tools and scripts and assets that's going to help them make a sale. So many businesses are going to run channel partners, and then they're salespeople. They can now just go out and do things, and they just give them a brochure and hope for the best. It just never works, right?
Yeah. No, it doesn't work unless that's the entire business model, which it rarely is. So, we're definitely over-indexing in how much support we provide, which isn't particularly scalable now. But true to anything in innovation, most things that are brilliant don't scale at first, and it's those things that you learn from and can figure out how to scale them later.
Well, that's right. I mean, there's a story that Peter Thiel talks about. I think it was Peter Thiel who talks about the guys from Airbnb. They were hoping for the best. Have you heard the story where they can't really get more people? They're trying to get things happening. What's the problem? We're not really getting great photos. So he actually gave them a camera, sent them to New York, where most of the Airbnb places were, and said, "Go sit down, have a cup of tea with your host, and take photos. Use this camera." And Brilliant. They said, "Oh, that's not very scalable." He said, "Yeah, well, you're not. You got to go from 0 to 1. You've got to actually create that opportunity." And so what happened is they were able to sit down and so they spent the next couple of months on the road, sitting down and having cups of tea with the hosts and figuring those things out, figuring out the photos, doing the unscalable, which then of course became, a process and scale. So that's exactly
a brilliant story, an example of human-centered design. I mean, anyone that's high ego and thinks they know the answer to everything would not have done that, and I guarantee they wouldn't have succeeded at the rate that Airbnb did. So, it's a great
the Airbnb guys just thought, "Oh, well, we're running a software business. Let's just do that." But the mentor said, "No, you've actually still got to go meet the customer. You've got to get that human, as you said, that human-centered design piece."
Right.
Yeah, very cool. Hey, so what are the when you're dealing with your team, has there been any major challenges that you found when dealing with groups of people? How many people work with you now?
We're a team of 18.
Rightio. So have you found as you've gone past those numbers, you're starting to not lose touch, but the challenges there? What have you come up across there?
Yeah, again, everything's a journey, isn't it? I mean, when you're a team of kind of 3 or 4, communication's really easy. Everyone knows what everyone else is working on, so it's very easy to have alignment. It's not too complicated in terms of KPIs and OKRs and that kind of thing. So that's easy, but then the challenge there is that your needs change so fast that those 4 people may very quickly sort of run their course. So that was the challenge early on, is sort of finding the people that could grow with us and fit into the roles as we evolved. I'd say we're now, in the team jokes that we're sort of now in teenager phase. It's a really awkward size, I'll be honest. It's probably made more complex by the fact that we've got a few offshore team, some of our tech staff and support staff, but also a team of 4, including my co-founder over in the UK. So you've got the added complexity of different markets which have slightly different needs and also different time zones. So that has been a challenge, but a challenge that I'm so glad that we took, because I really think an Australian startup needs to be global as quickly as possible, because we are a little bubble. And, if you want to be taken seriously and access the big market, you've got to go after Europe or the US. But I think the teenage thing really comes from the fact that everything, we're kind of growing and learning, and there's just loads of aches and pains the whole time. But everyone's ultimately passionate and brilliant and excited and has great ideas. But I think keep steering them on course and keeping them on course is the hardest part. And sometimes it's really obvious to me and my co-founder, like, we need to be focusing on this. But I've just learned the hard way so many times that they can't read my mind. They don't know that that's what we should be focusing on. And I'm kind of going, why are they doing that? But it's because I've never asked them. I've never shared that with them. So I think you need to have a lot closer discussions, particularly with your leadership team, but also making sure they're cascading that to their team. And that's tough, right? Because the bigger you are, the more you're just having millions of one-on-ones. So I would say that we have not found that perfect balance yet, but we're getting there.
Yeah, look, when I had my my software business, we grew it to about 70 people, and I would spend all day in the office with got a minute meetings. Oh, Matt, you got a minute? And I would have got a minute meetings from 8:30 in the morning till 5 o'clock. It was almost a revolving door, because I made the mistake of saying, come to me, because I was a young founder. I started my business at 22. So this is probably when I was about 26, 27, 70 people around. And it's a lot over 2 floors. And so it was just, I actually literally hired a general manager to take over my office. And then we took over the floor above us, gutted that floor and built new offices to essentially just, not that I didn't want to talk to my team, of course, but it was just a lot of noise, and that was really challenging to grow to that as quickly as that. To have those got-a-minute meetings all day. That was a real problem.
Right. And you try and build a culture, it sounds like you did, that with kind of flat hierarchy, really accessible founders. And
just come on in.
That's beautiful. That's so important. And your staff really value that, but it's limited. Your resource is not infinite.
Yeah. Well, when somebody comes to me and says, "Oh, they're yelling at me," and I say, "Well, what do you mean?" Well, they're typing in capitals in the internal chat thing. We used IRC. That might demonstrate to the listeners how old I am in business. We used internal IRC chat inside the office because Slack didn't exist, and they're yelling at me. And so now I needed to talk to two grown-ups about punctuation and capitalization in messages. Genuinely, I'd have a conversation. I said, I can't even believe we're having this conversation.
Yeah,
had to call these two ladies into the office and say,
zooming in and out is exhausting. I think it's a talent you have to learn as a founder, but it is very, very draining. And eventually I think it needs to end, and you need to draw a line in the sand and find those operational leadership people, like you said, your GM, that can sort of relieve you of that day-to-day burden.
Yeah, that's right. It was a real relief. Of course, then I built the corner office and sat myself on with a leather inlay desk, and it was all very fancy. I went, now I'm bored.
What do I do now?
So what do I do now? So because I'm a salesperson, what I did is I actually went and went into the sales room, went downstairs into the sales room, set up a little, the little, 1,200, 1,500 square size desk with the other salespeople, and competed with the salespeople in the sales room as a salesperson. And you know what? That was the best time of my life. I've got this problem in finance. Cool. Talk to Terry. She's in charge of that. I've got this problem with HR. Cool. Talk to Oliver. He's in charge of that. I'm just here making sales. And that was the best time of my life, is just being a salesperson in my business.
I mean, I would say, when people say, what advice do you have for founders? I do think it's, firstly, have a co-founder. I mean, I don't know if you did it on your own. If you do, I deeply admire you.
Or with my wife. My wife, we both, so I was 22, she was 21. We started the company, and I ran sales and marketing, and then she ran everything else, finance, programming, everything. Yeah. And what complementary skills? I was going to say that's the next thing. Like, you want somebody in the founding team that's good at sales, and then you need somebody that's a bit more technical and functional and can figure out the day-to-day problems. So yeah, it sounds like you're a powerhouse duo. Luckily, Joanna and I are a good fit as well. But many founders are technical only and then can't sell, or some are amazing at selling but then can't build. So yeah, I think finding that co-founder is the most important thing. Look, so many of my clients come to me when they've reached that $1 million to $2 million range, and they've exhausted their network of referrals and friends, and they can't. They go, well, how do we take it to the $5 million or the $10 million range? It's just, how do we break out of that founder-led technical conversation where feeds and speeds is interesting and important, to go to the marketing conversation where outcomes and often when you're selling to large corporates and in very, very large businesses, it's no longer about better, faster, cheaper. It's about looking good and covering your backside. Because it's, when you're dealing with very, very large corporates and also government, it's not the value, because we're still dealing with a B2, not, I don't think of it as B2B as in business to business, but I think it's a H to H. But what's the human who I'm selling to care about? And it's not better, faster, cheaper, because it's not their money. It's not their budget line. What it is, it's about, and of course, fewer people might mean that their fiefdom gets eroded. So they don't care about that either. So I actually teach my customers to start really understanding the psychographics of the person they're selling to, and then play that game, which is often in those large businesses, looking good, making sure your next promotion is looked after, being important, that type of communication.
That's brilliant. And I think a lot of salespeople, takes them a long time to figure out that there's not a playbook for that. That is just, it's good psychology and it's good empathy with a bit of good persuasion laced in as well.
Well, that's right. I mean, and people don't want to be sold to, but they like buying things. So we need to position these, and so if we can position our product in the mind of our customer as a solution to a problem that they have deep down, not necessarily the better, faster, cheaper problem or dig the tunnel problem, but how do I actually really succeed in my personal career problem? Then we can actually start springboarding into those conversations far more successfully.
Great point. So great point. Yeah, maybe we need
that's
to
how
talk.
I think about it. Hey, look, Kat, because of some technical issues and various other problems, we've got to just cut this conversation short. I'd like to continue speaking, but I've got a dash.
So look, sometimes shorter is better. Everyone's time is incredibly precious. So hopefully they took something away from this, your listeners.
Thank you. Hey, look, Kat, if anybody wants to get in touch with you, how do they do so?
I'm on LinkedIn, Catherine Long, Catherine with a C or Cat with a C. Otherwise, it's cat@our-trace.com. Would love to hear from you.
Perfect. Thanks very much for your time. Really appreciate it. Have a great day.
Amazing. Thanks. Nice to meet you.
Bye for now.